Okay, we are live. So, hi, good morning.
Morning.
Greetings.
You're
We are
starting
recording.
something maybe?
Yes, we are starting the presentation of Tolam, the future marketplace from carbon assets. So, hello. Greetings. I'm Miroslav Bolza. We are at the Digital Innovation Pavilion at the United Nations Climate Conference COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And I'm here today with Matthew Porter from Tolam. And we have a presentation about the future marketplace for carbon assets. Enjoy the show. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthew Porter. I'm CEO of Tolam Earth. Today I'm going to talk to you about the future of the carbon marketplace. Specifically, I'm going to talk about our automated regression market maker. This is one of our unique features. It'll be on our marketplace and we'll be tying into other people's marketplaces as well. So a little bit about Tolam. Our vision is net zero by 2040. We actually internally talk about how we're going to put the company out of business in the next 18 years. Company gone, said, done, because the world has reached full carbon neutral, carbon net zero by 2040. So today our mission is that we are building the world's largest marketplace for high quality carbon digital assets. We want to build it based upon trust, transparency, and value for buyers and sellers. That truly does mean liquidity for the first time. So a little bit about us, and I'll reference a couple of these in my presentation. We like to talk about our core values. I look at core values as our guardrails for the road. That's what keeps us aligned. That's what makes sure that we make the right decisions in every decision we make, whether big or small. To me, our core values symbolize everything that we want Tolam to be and we're currently operating for. And that starts with prepare, protect, and serve our planet sustainably. Leave no holes. If there's a gap, we're going to fill it. If we cause it, we're going to fill it. We're going to take responsibility for it. If something's not going to get us to our mission and our vision, then we're not going to leave that hole unfulfilled. We're going to take it to that next level. And then kintsugi. If anybody knows what this is a Japanese art. It basically occurs in pottery, and when pottery breaks, instead of tossing it aside, they actually repair it with gold. And that's the kind of way we look at the world. We've kind of gotten it a little bit broken, so we're going to repair it. And the idea of kintsugi is it's stronger and it's more beautiful when it's done. So to us, we want to actually make it stronger and more beautiful when we're all done with it. We want to use technology to maximize our access, trust, and value for all of our communities. And we want to keep it as simple as possible. And that's really what I'm going to highlight here when I talk about our automated regression market maker. Because it's a complicated thing to buy carbon assets today. To buy those carbon offsets, it's very complicated. The average chief sustainability officer puts in 300 hours just to make one purchase. We are aiming to get this to 4:55 p.m. Chief Sustainability Officer needs to know that they need to buy carbon offsets, but they also want to get home to have dinner with their family and out the door by 5. We want it that simple. So a little bit about the current carbon offset purchasing process. We find it way too cumbersome. It's opaque, both in the assets and the price, and it's just not scalable. If you can't figure out what you're buying, truly what you're buying, and trace it all the way through, it's cumbersome, it's opaque. And therefore that breeds trust, that breeds distrust, and that breeds complications. 300 hours once again that we keep hearing about. This is from Carbon Pulse. There isn't a single transparent price for what is essentially the same thing, a carbon credit. Without a single standard, there is a high probability of confusion about whether one standard is actually better than the other. For us, that's a problem. For a chief sustainability officer, for any organization thinking, I want to offset my carbon, that's a critique and that's a challenge ahead of them. We cannot let that continue to be. So how are we going to get there? For Tolam Earth, we're part of the Hedera ecosystem, proud part of that Hedera ecosystem, and we want something that's trust, transparent, and liquidity. Technologically, the trust and transparency, we can get there. We're going to open up and shed light on this. For all of us in the Hedera ecosystem, we talk a fair amount about things like digital MRV. We talk about the Guardian, how we take methodologies, we turn it into policies. Those policies get executed. If the policy is fulfilled, that carbon asset, the carbon offset, is actually tokenized, put on the chain, put on the Hedera Hashgraph. That makes it auditable. From the creation all the way through the creation of the asset down through the sensors, it makes it truly auditable at every single step. To us, that's what provides trust. That's what provides transparency. You want to know what you're buying, you want to know the origination of it, and you want to know the source of it. That also creates increased rigor in the validation process. Because at any one step, you can actually choose to take a look at that. You can choose to audit that specific step. You can verify that that data is there. And yet at the end of it, we also want to ensure liquidity. And that's where we actually end up with the biggest challenge for us. That's where we think the marketplace enters the biggest challenge, is how do you get liquidity? So let's start with our three things that we need. Auditability. Data is digitally sourced. We're pulling it from the sensors, through our partners. They're storing it on the ledger. They're writing it down to the chain. That then at that point then is actually truly verified. All the roles, all the actors on it are fully disclosed. We know who wrote that data sensor. We have accounted for it once and only once. And then at that point, we have open sourced with the community. When I say we, I mean the collective Hedera ecosystem. We've open sourced our methodologies, oftentimes the white papers on it, the scientific white papers. If any of you saw our presentation with Nova on the cook stoves, that's part of what we did with them. Working together to put that methodology together. We've open sourced that methodology. We're open sourcing the policy, which is basically the computer code for that methodology and how it gets applied. And this is all executed on Hedera Hashgraph at a mutable public ledger. That's the key important point. With every single step, as we build up from that foundation of the data sensor, it gets audited and then recorded. When you do that, this makes all the data actually truly discoverable. We can discover every single asset of that because we've got that collective foundation of all of that data together. That also means the unique attributes. The attributes being there, the attributes actually being truly complete. Typically, if anybody's bought carbon offsets, carbon assets today, you're typically looking at the project. You want to actually understand that project. You might even actually want to understand the people behind that project. This actually takes that step away in many ways because what we've done is we've made it immutable. We've actually stored every single part of it to make it truly transparent, to provide that visibility. Once again, I'm going to go back to what our mission is on this, the largest carbon marketplace. And we get there by trying to go after that person leaving at 455 because they bought those offsets, they're done. They didn't waste 8, 9, 10 weeks to get to this point. Because that offset can be unique, that gives us all those attributes. So which may matter to that chief sustainability officer, not just the project type, but maybe even the social good behind it. Is it a minority-led? Is it a female-led project on that? That gets stored as part of our offset creation. And therein lies the problem. How do you actually price this? How do we make sure that the project developer is getting the offset at the price that it deserves when it has thousands, if not millions, of unique attributes on it? How are we ensuring that the buyer is actually getting a fair price? So we've recently heard about 2 different coffee chains in Europe buying the same exact offsets, and one is paying twice the price of the other. Without any data, without any information behind that, we actually don't know who's getting hurt in that equation. Is it the one paying twice the price? Is it the project developer who's selling it for the cheaper price? Until we know those attributes, we actually don't know who's getting the right or the wrong price in this. And that also then creates problems with liquidity. So in traditional market makers, you've got the bid, you've got the spread, you've got the sell price on it. With all of that, that's being done by humans. In the automated market makers, this is an algorithm, and that algorithm defines what the price is based upon the assets in there and the type of assets. It can be 2 assets or more, 8, 10, or possibly even more than that. But there is an algorithmic equation. And if an asset is withdrawn, it can be actually replaced with the same exact asset because it's a true commodity. If I take $1 out, I can put $1 in. If I take, one coin out in the whole blockchain crypto world and I put the same coin back in, it's truly replaceable in that. We know that that asset is the same asset effectively going in and out. In traditional markets, that could be that. It could be I want to buy aluminum. I can trade aluminum in, I can trade aluminum out for that. That doesn't work when every single part of what we are creating, what we're storing, is a unique carbon offset. Even within oftentimes the same project. And then how do you pull those together across multiple projects? And this is a liquidity challenge. Hundreds of thousands of fundamentally different assets. They need to be available for search. They need to be available for purchase, for aggregation. And there's millions of attribute types on this. But then how do you discover price? Once again, if we're going to build the offset marketplace that actually truly has scale, you actually need to know how to price something so it's fair for both the buyer and the seller in it. We want the sellers to come back. We want them to create more offsets. We want the buyers to buy more offsets and feel like they got a fair price. And the other challenge is, because of the way we take in our offsets, our DMRV, that digital system, is actually allowing somebody, the moment they have achieved an offset creation, it automatically can get tokenized and it can automatically get put on the marketplace. There's no waiting for a month, 3 months, 12 months. It's instantly available on the marketplace. And that has problems and challenges as well. Because we don't want to have a whole bunch of stuff dumped onto the marketplace because that could cause price fluctuations. We want the seller to get the fair price. But the moment that asset's available, we want it to be able to be truly sold and somebody to actually take it off the market, burn it. But if it's only 5, 10 assets, somebody may not want to purchase just 10 assets. They may want to purchase 100,000. So they don't just need an asset from this person that just produced 10. They need the remainder of the assets, which will come across other projects, but we want it to match exactly that, based upon that buyer's needs. So this is our solution to it. It's referred to as ARM. It's our automated regression market maker. And I like putting this up here because I said to you at the beginning, we have core values. We have beliefs that we want us to have guardrails. If I put 1 million assets on the marketplace with 1 million different attributes, how do I actually tell the buyer that they're getting a fair price? How do I tell the seller that they're getting a fair price? So we actually built this partially aligned with our core values of keep it as simple as possible. So when we look at keeping something as simple as possible, I want to let the seller put everything about that attribute on the market, everything about that offset on the market, every attribute on it. And yet what I want to do is I want to price it based upon what the seller needs, what matters to that seller. That's the context for this. Allow the seller to put everything on there, allow the buyer to choose what matters to her or him. Like truly the buyer determining that. So how does this work? With millions of pieces of data, with millions of attributes on millions of potential offsets. So what we do is we consider things similar enough. For anybody that's ever purchased a house or apartment, similar enough things in comparison are things like, hey, I know it has 2.5 bathrooms. That's similar enough. I know that that listing has 2 bathrooms and a half bathroom. I don't need to know potentially the square footage of that bathroom. It may not matter to me. I know it has certain bedrooms, so I can price according to that. But here's the unique part about all of this, is that once again, that matters to me as the buyer. How do I price it based upon what matters to me as the buyer? And our arm, that market maker, actually gives a price range to it. It finds things that are similar enough and then provides this whole power function to see how far away does that fit from what a potential buyer may want. And it determines that price range based upon that. So going back to my example earlier of the 2.5 bathrooms, if I say I'm selling a place that has 2.5 bathrooms, I know it's in this specific area, I know it has access to this specific services and amenities, I know what the price range should be in that, the upper and the lower end of that price range as my seller. As a buyer looking in that, and I can decide where in that range I want to be based upon other factors that may align with it. So what we do is after we've identified those unique attributes, we've pulled them together. We understand that these are wind projects irrespective of the location of it, irrespective of the geography of it, irrespective of the project of it. We then identify the other attributes, we put those together in pools. We do pricing systems based upon that. We identify those attributes which will truly affect the pricing. So some attributes may affect the pricing. For example, if somebody's all of a sudden searching for female-created carbon offset, the pricing through of this. So we start putting them together. And then we target the search for the buyers based upon their attributes. If we see spikes in those attributes rising of all the carbon offsets that have been sold, we actually understand that's a pricing change that's occurring just by that unique attribute alone. So what this does is this gives the buyer the preferred asset pools, which drives a higher value and price for them. And also, by driving that higher value and price, it truly creates investments and generations of value, truly valued assets. Finally, this loop drives further availability of supply and demand. If all of a sudden that we put out there and we're saying our arm is determining, because you can ask the arm, okay, what is the price of an offset based upon these criteria? If we're seeing that increase, because we're seeing the market price increase, we know that that will drive investment in those specific types of projects, which is at the end of the day what we want. We want the seller to get that fair price, we want the buyer to get that fair price, and we want there to be availability of the offsets that which matter to them. So as an overall, kind of what this looks like is our buyers define the pricing and asset preferences. Our pools, our NFT pools, our asset pools, they are grouped by those sufficiently similar. That's the key criteria. Nobody's really ever done this before. How do you actually price stuff as a pool together, put them all lumped together, sell it, and then you actually kind of consistently flip that based upon what the buyer sees as valuable. Instead of just how many are available, because they're not all commodities, they're semi-fungible. What's the price of that? That's how we put it together. And that creates a lot of uniqueness in this marketplace. As an overall, what the arm looks like in terms of how this interacts with the market, our arm is constantly giving pricing guidance, and we actually want this exchange friction in there. We want the exchange to actually understand that pricing difference so we can continue to close that spread so that we ensure that the buyer and the seller are receiving that fair price based upon the attributes of there. This puts us in this constant loop of these asset pools being created based upon the granularity, the discovery of those assets, the price differentiation on that, buyers match to their specific needs. We don't want the opaqueness that I talked about earlier. I bought carbon offsets. Great. Tell me about them. I paid this price. What else do you have? Well, hey, I bought these carbon offsets because they're wind projects. I also wanted geopolitical diversity of where I wanted my assets to come across, so I pulled them all together so I was capable of doing those wind assets on that. And then we actually derive higher margins based upon that because we're valuing that asset based upon its true uniqueness and its true attribute. At that point, we have this constant friction between the supply and demand, normal capitalistic markets on that, and that therefore provides liquidity. So in the end, the ARM gives us price discovery for semi-fungible assets. Once again, going back to that similarly alike assets, we're also constantly measuring the state of the marketplace. And our ARM actually, in the next year, will start trading on its own so that we actually will ensure that there is liquidity in the marketplace, not just for those that want to buy, those that want to sell, but overall those that could be buying and those that could be selling. Going back to my whole point with that digital MRV, constantly allowing the kicking off of new assets on there, we don't want that asset to sit. If we understand that that asset recently had value and we believe it's going to go up, we're going to go ahead and buy that asset on the marketplace immediately. So all that puts us to where we are at this point. Hundreds of thousands of substantially data-driven assets available for search, aggregation, and purchase. This is how we get to that liquidity. The DMRV drives a faster listing of those offsets. Here's what's exciting, because we think that will this not just impact our marketplace, we want this to impact all offset marketplaces, and that we think fundamentally we'll get to a point where we are actually capable of predicting the true global carbon price. Not just the price of the assets, but the price that the cost of greenhouse emissions are going to cost that corporation, that entity, for when they want to buy. And our market maker automatically purchases pre-selected on approved pricing. Once again, going back to that DMRV, kicking off so many assets at a higher velocity, not the market dumping them on there, or then that could drive the price down. We don't want that to occur. We want steady, stable pricing on this, and by constantly allowing our market maker to do that, we actually have the ability to sustain that price instead of it dropping down, dropping back up, dropping down, dropping back up. So this is how we believe we get to this true critical mass. So we're proud to be part of the Hedera network. We see the blue chip adopters on there looking for that are buyers and sellers of ESG assets. Our ARM truly brings liquidity to that market. And finally, our mirror serves to facilitate identifying and matching tokens based upon those attributes, increasing trade liquidity. Once again, we don't want the market to fluctuate up and down based upon assets availability. We want it valued based upon those attributes, not just what is available at this moment in time. And that's it. That's the introduction to Tolam and the automated regression market maker. So thank you all. I appreciate you having me here. And thanks to everybody at home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It was a very interesting presentation, and I think it fills a systemic gap. It's really the differentiation between credits and from my point of view and the work that I'm doing, it was also very insightful. We are working in the field of citizens and youth climate action empowerment. And we have the plan, and we work with Unique Network NFT platform on certifying each climate action and climate action outcome, and that it can be as an NFT, and that it can then be also connected with global information systems like the UNFCCC Global Climate Action Data Portal, and on the other hand that it is turned into an asset and that people can act as micro-climate entrepreneurs. We connect this with cities. For instance, there are cities that have declared climate neutrality goals. So the public sector needs to channel then public resources into these individual actors. And for this is one thing, just for the logic of what we are talking about. But we are also, from a global systems perspective, we are saying we need to connect the local action, the action of the young people, with global resources, like, for instance, the Green Climate Fund. And there the typical ticket is something like starting from $50 million or so, and it's very far away from the amount of youth-led climate action activity, which is perhaps worth $10 or something like that. And there's another source, a big pot of financial resources that we are looking at, is the giving pledge. There are more than 200 families who have pledged to give back to society half of their wealth, and they have a combined wealth of $1 trillion. And now channeling this big amount of money towards these youth programs is an extreme burden on administration and everything. And if we somehow really have the tools that we aggregate these tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of youth climate actions and initiatives, and then have the resource holders can specify what are the attributes, what are the goals, what are the SDGs they want to support, and the geographies, demographies, whatever they want, then we will be able to really make the link from this micro. Once we have this, then we will function much better as a global family, global community that is effectively addressing climate challenges, climate crisis, and blockchain will help, and your solution is certainly a step in the right direction.
Thank you. I mean, I look at us not trying to redefine human behavior, which I feel like we're kind of doing right now in the carbon markets. You know, we're trying to get human beings we've grown up for the last 20, 30 years having true choice as buyers of what we want. That's why that chief sustainability officer is part of the reason why she is spending 300 hours in 2.5 months determining what am I specifically going to buy, how is it aligned to my organization's vision, mission, core values, how is it aligned to what we want. But if all we're doing is just giving this overbrief about it, that doesn't actually go back to human nature. Humans want choice. We want choices in anything we can. It's why you walk into the restaurant and it's got 42 pages of it and you're like, I just want a burger. Like, we need to actually be treating this as true choices by buyers. And the best way we can do that is by highlighting what makes it unique from the seller's perspective. Sellers bringing those attributes forward. How do we highlight that to the buyer? How do we actually price it right so the seller says, I want to produce more of this specific attribute because, or this specific offset, because it has this attribute to it. So thank you for all you do.
And it certainly also helps because if we have these tools that based on different attributes, there's a differentiation in price, then we also have a better understanding of the value of climate action.
Right.
Because currently we don't know what kind of action is valuable. We don't have the knowledge of pathways towards climate action and climate action impact. And if we have the tools that put it in an aggregated manner on the market so that we will have some traffic and some liquidity and we get then more information about what people value as important, then we can build the education system, the capacity building systems better, that we will have more of those activities and credit generating activities that the world regards as valuable.
Perfect. I know how we can go. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions here in the audience? Any brothers here?
I might be right to say that outside Europe and the US, the carbon market is just evolving. I don't know. In my state, Nigeria, that is Niger State, Nigeria, which is almost as big as Scotland, for example. We have like about 2.3 million hectares of forest cover. The major problem we have in Niger State is that there's so much deforestation. People using wood to cook. Nigeria now plans to stop further deforestation and provide alternative cooking energy. Should Niger State succeed in doing that, is Niger State right now to call or to refer to the forest that has been replenished as a carbon asset? Potentially. I mean, truly, potentially, it could be a carbon asset. If measured correctly, and actually put on the marketplace, it's also reading that DMRV data on it. It's truly something that's being preserved, it's well being taken care of. There is the potential to do that as a carbon offset. Okay? And so, instead, can I invite people to come and measure the carbon? Yeah, there are definitely people. If you want to connect offline, I'm happy to try to get you somebody to connect you to measure that carbon. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. I think we can conclude the session.
Thank you all. Thank you all. I appreciate you listening.
Okay. Let's here to end broadcast.